Hello, everyone. I hope that you are all well. So, as you know, we are studying Buddhism today in our online world religions class. And so I wanted to do a close reading and commentary of some of the Dhammapada. Basically, this is a beloved and well-known collection of sayings of the Buddha. It was compiled a bit later than some of the other texts that we have. This is comprised of 423 verses, and it basically talks about how to develop yourself, your character, your virtue, to reduce your suffering, and to be in harmony and peace with the rest of the world. I wanted to read a bit of the preface because I think it describes this text pretty well, and then we'll get into it. The Dhammapada holds a special place of distinction in Buddhist literature. It is often characterized as the most representative example of the teachings of the Buddha. It provides beautifully and simply a key to the fundamentals of early Buddhist philosophy and has been translated from the original Pali into more languages than any other Buddhist text. Let's skip to, it points to a way of life and attitudes that emphasize harmony and oneness with all living beings. Its message of right action is timeless, and the Dhammapada breaks up into two words, Dhamma and Pada, Pada meaning foot, or which could mean way of, and Dhamma meaning the Buddhist doctrines, righteousness, eternal truth. So the way of eternal truth or the way of righteousness, you could think of it. There's lots of different ways to interpret the word Dhamma. And it would be a good study and a good topic for an essay to discuss what it means, maybe referring to this text. It speaks to the perfectibility of humankind. Life is enhanced and ultimately perfected, it claims, by inward development. To the seeker, there is provided a grounded moral philosophy with no reference to a savior. So we sort of save ourselves by our right action and right thoughts, and like the Eightfold Path. Okay, so the first chapter is twins. Mind is the forerunner of all actions. And of course, as you know, when you're reading these texts, looking at a variety of translations is suggested because one might speak to you more than another. Some are try to be more literal and straightforward in their translations. Others try to capture the essence or the spirit via the translator's interpretation and feeling, and some try to be poetic and more lyrical. So I enjoy this particular translation. It's translated by Ananda Maitreya, I think is how you say it. And I don't know, I just had this for a while. So mind is the forerunner of all actions. All deeds are led by mind, created by mind. So this could emphasize the importance of our thoughts. When you listen to people who are sort of spiritual leaders today, even they will talk about how important our thoughts, and even psychologists and scientists, like neuroscientists, will talk about how our thoughts can influence how we feel about ourselves and about the world, and can affect mental health. If we can sort of generate feelings and emotions and align our thoughts with those feelings and emotions of gratitude and love and joy. A lot of people say that this kind of transforms their minds, and with accompanying practices such as meditation can relieve anxiety and relieve depression, which seems like a great, like a big claim that maybe we should be careful about making. But I've experienced that in my own life, and I think people who are talking about it are talking from their own experience. And so with Buddhism, the sort of suggestion is to try it out and experiment and see if it works for you. And if it doesn't, then to lay it aside. So there's no kind of evangelical kind of mindset in Buddhism. It's supposed to be practical. If one speaks or acts with a corrupt mind, suffering follows. And you could, write an essay on this, on twins, and, kind of muse about, well, what does a corrupt mind mean? What does it mean to you? And I think that it has to be very personal and individual. A corrupt mind might be just something that's unhealthy, a mindset or habitual attitudes that do not serve us, that bring us more suffering, that don't see things clearly. C.S. Lewis, the Christian writer, said that God was God because he sees things exactly as they are, instead of muddled by our ego or our false assumptions or us taking things personally, etc. As the wheel follows the hoof of an ox pulling a cart. So one thing leads to another. So we have this cause and effect law, kind of relevant to Buddhism. Mind is the forerunner of all actions. You have this repeated again, or repeated. All deeds are led by mind, created by mind. All deeds, okay, so this is just a repetition again, but I didn't mention it. So all deeds are created by mind. So what follows another? How are thoughts related to our beliefs, related to our emotions, related to our actions and our decisions, and sort of the outcome of the consequences of who we are and what we do. So if we can start to kind of see the domino effect, or how one aspect of ourselves leads to another, perhaps we can have agency and make change in our life, is what I see this as saying. If one speaks or acts with a serene mind, happiness follows, as surely as one's shadow. So there's a lot of certainty in here. It's almost scientific. He abused me, so this is in quotes, he abused me, he mistreated me, defeated me, robbed me. Harboring such thoughts keeps hatred alive. He abused me, mistreated me, defeated me, robbed me. Releasing such thoughts banishes hatred for all time. So I think we've all been in a situation where we ruminate over a situation or a person that has triggered us and kind of driven us to these sort of negative emotions that almost feel self-destructive in their weight. Why is this person mad at me? We get frustrated that we can't fix a situation or control a situation or show someone how much they hurt us. And, we can kind of question, who is really being harmed by the continual rumination? Because the other person that hurt us, let's say, or offended us or insulted us or didn't respect us or acknowledge who we are or see us in the way we wanted to be seen, they might not be thinking about us at all. They might be, just kind of going on with their day. And it's us who are holding on. There's this parable or this story of, two monks traveling, and the monks aren't supposed to touch, the male monks aren't supposed to touch a woman. But they came to this river, this narrow river that they could cross and needed to cross, and there was a woman there who couldn't cross but needed to. I can't remember why. Maybe she just I don't know. Yeah, I don't know why, but she couldn't. And so as one of the monks picks her up and carries her across, maybe just like out of compassion, or something like that. And then, so the monks are moving on their way. The woman goes off on her own separate way. And the monk who did not pick up the woman says, I still can't get over that you sort of like abandoned our vows of virtues, and you touched a woman. And the monk who did pick up the woman said, I relieved the woman long ago. I set her down, but you are still carrying her. And so it kind of shows like how our thoughts can really keep us stuck instead of moving forward in kind of a healthy way. Like there's lots of things in the world that we can't control that causes us to suffer. But I think Buddhism tries to point out how we contribute to that suffering and sometimes make things worse. Like and this is where the idea of non-attachment comes in. If we can lay the woman down, so to speak, metaphorically, I guess maybe that's not like the best metaphor today, but if we can lay down what we are shelve or, just kind of let go, that maybe a situation that we can't control, a person that we feel that we want to control, but we can't, if we can let that go and not be so attached, then we can not disrupt our sleep, and we can, show up for others and be compassionate to ourselves, and not let our heart race. And, they say that having chronic anger or chronic stress can start to affect you physically and manifest in certain kinds of sickness. And I think we've all had a situation where our mindset and our thoughts and our fears and our worries have actually made us feel like we have a stomach ache, or that our chest, our heart hurts, or given us a headache, or made us feel sleepy, or gave us insomnia. And so this is what I think in this cause and effect that these Buddhist sayings are trying to wake us up to, so that we can use this to help ourselves and help others. So what words do we rehearse, and what effect does that have on ourselves and our family and friends, those we're in relationship with? So this is number 5. Animosity does not, in the same chapter, animosity does not eradicate animosity. Only by loving kindness is animosity dissolved. This law is ancient and eternal. So we can think of what other words we can put in place of animosity as well. You can't fight fire with fire is a saying. How do you, if someone is angry, responding with anger as well, because maybe they deserve it, is that really going to mitigate the situation? And what is our goal? Thinking of our goal, the solution, it's maybe to reconcile, it's maybe to get people to take responsibility, it's to calm the flames, perhaps, of intense emotions. And this is where maybe, and I know I'm bringing up a lot of like cliched phrases, but sometimes maybe that helps some of you understand being the bigger person, and like where the wisdom that those cliches come from, perhaps sometimes. Being the bigger person, how can we work internally in ourselves, maybe separately, and then come back to the situation and be calm, and maybe even compassionate and empathic. And this has a positive effect on the other person that maybe we're trying to reconcile with, or we're trying to get through to. And now we can have a rational conversation where our emotions, or at least our negative emotions, are not getting in the way and creating a wall between us. 6, there are those who are aware that they are always facing death. Knowing this, they put aside all quarrels. So it's kind of like saying, putting things, to put things into perspective. And also those who say, live as if you were dying, make the most of this moment. What is really important? Is it the end of the world? A lot of us, I think, myself included, catastrophize and just make things the end of the world. But is it actually the end of the world? Maybe sometimes time heals because people just naturally get distracted and forget about things. And, and are you going to, I mean, sometimes I guess you will, but are you going to know your colleague or this person you're in class with? Are you going to be with them forever? Will it matter? Will this argument or this, embarrassment or whatever it is, will it matter in 10 and 15 years? Will it matter when you're facing death? What will matter? And what would you like to recall or remember looking back on your life? The one who lives for sensation, indulgent in eating, lazy and lacking energy, the tempter Mara breaks. And Mara is, as you read in the textbook, a metaphor for illusion, for temptation. Just as the wind breaks a frail tree. So I guess here there is maybe something about making yourself resilient and maybe not distracting yourself by activities that might not put you in the best position to make good decisions or to feel good long term. And I think also because it talks about sensation and maybe material kind of activities like eating and talking about being lazy, so not acting. So it's finding that balance. That middle way is always important in Buddhism. So this seems to go to one extreme and not necessarily be good for us. The one who lives mindfully senses under control. Okay, sorry, I didn't read that correctly with the right emphasis. The one who lives mindfully senses under control, moderate in eating, devout, energetic, cannot be overthrown by Mara. So we cannot fall into, maybe there are certain states and certain behaviors and certain life paths where we're more susceptible to being reactive rather than responding to the situation in, rationality and calmness and, I guess energies that are of a higher vibration and consciousness. There's lots of ways we can talk about this. These are just the words I'm using. And so and I think the same idea is in the New Testament and Christianity. And I want to encourage us in basically what is a comparative religious studies class to maybe see the similarities and the differences when we can amongst the religions, because I think it helps us sort of digest and understand them even as they are individually. And so there is this idea that, I'm thinking of the parable of the handmaids. Those who were sleeping missed, the knock at the door. They missed the arrival of the person they were waiting for. But those who were awake, who didn't let, what does it say, their oil lamp shades, that doesn't sound right, their light sources go out. Where's my Bible? They were ready, so to keep yourself ready and prepared, I think it aligns with this particular verse. So there's always so it seems like this particular chapter is kind of going back and forth saying, this is one way you can live, and the consequences, this is another way that you can live with the consequences. And I don't think it's really being moralizing. It's more just speaking, I think, from a place of experience and wisdom, of what helps progress and enlighten and evolve humanity and the individual, and what keeps us in the past, keeps us sort of mired and feeling stuck and dissatisfied. The monk's robe does not in itself render one free from stain. If the one who wears that robe is lacking in self-control and honesty, he is unworthy of such a robe. And I think this is really great. I actually love this verse because it tries to discriminate between maybe what could be superficial representations of religion or of virtue, etc., and maybe the deeper essential kind of virtues and values. Not necessarily saying, I guess I'm kind of setting that up a bit dualistically, but not saying that the robe or the outer elements are not important, but that one without the other sort of causes a failing in the more explicit, outward, ritualistic sort of clothing or prop or whatever you might have to get to that you're using to help you generate feelings and be kind to others and have integrity and evolve your character. Only one who is free from stain, well-disciplined, honest, and endowed with self-control is worthy of a monk's robe. So you can kind of make a list, I think, when you're going through this, of the values and the virtues according to Buddhists. So being well-disciplined. And what does it mean to be free from stain? I think that is a word that has been translated that you could dwell or muse upon. It's kind of like the word sin in Christianity. Some have looked at it maybe more etymologically as missing the mark. So sin is not, you can look at sin in Christianity as something that just goes against God, and it could be somewhat arbitrary and random, depending on your perspective. It's just something that's against God. So whatever God says, if you're against it, that's a sin. Of course, I don't think most Christians, people who are following Christianity would think that way. They would characterize God as someone who is good, so will only have good virtues that you should follow. But nevertheless, if you want to take sin in a secular way, you could, by interpreting it as missing the mark, which I feel like would be in line with Buddhism and the Dhammapada's sayings. So to be stained is to miss the mark of how you could best be acting and thinking and moving along in the world, how you could best honor yourself. And, and then comparing with last week, Taoism, missing the mark on Wu Wei and effortless action and unfolding yourself as naturally as possible, going to the generative source. So I think that, and I only, I guess, expound upon that because I would say that I understand that some phrases and some words in these religious texts might stir up angst or be uncomfortable, or some people use the word trigger, right? I think I did in the beginning of the video. It can trigger you because it might seem, or it might be that word, that concept loaded with an idea that's problematic. And that might be true. And I would say that that is a perfect opportunity then to really think about what the actual essence of that word or that phrase is. What are they really trying to say? So maybe there's another word or another description that could be more in alignment with what you feel is non-problematic for you and that serves you and that's healthy. If that makes sense. So being well-disciplined, being honest, remember in Taoism, there was a lot about sincerity, there was a lot about integrity. So this is where you can start to make some comparisons as well. And endowed with self-control. So it does take a certain, I guess, discipline and self-control to be upon an intentional way. Whatever that might mean for your character, for integrity, for the emotions that you want to invite in your life, and what helps that and what hurts that, So it could be discipline on the Instagram accounts that we follow or the YouTube videos that we watch. What we're binging on Netflix. What are we, just like the food that we consume, the information and the content that we consume can perhaps, maybe not with everyone and not always, but it might affect, what you want and what you don't want in a sense. Like it might distract you from your intended way in whatever belief system or philosophical, system you are following and you align with. Those who fail to distinguish the non-essential from the essential and the essential from the non-essential will, in feeding on wrong thoughts, fail to attain the essential. So that's that kind of just goes along with the last saying and what I was describing or trying to describe. Being able to discern and just always pay attention and aware, not, I think, to be like to the extreme of hypervigilance, because I think that would cause us, to go to the other extreme, and try to be perfect, I think would also cause suffering, right? So that's why we have to go back to the middle way. And wherever we are, the pendulum can move, to help us get back to that center and that groundedness, because I think the whole point or the intention of all of these religious traditions and all of these spiritualities, even though maybe it they don't sometimes manifest or evolve according to those intentions, but I think the original intention and the essence is to try to help the self, to try to help people and try to help communities and society and our species, humanity, and all living beings and sentient beings, etc. So to just, I think, soothe and heal. And so we really have to discern and not take on anything that doesn't help us, even if it's said to help us. And Buddhism is very, very clear on this. Once Buddhism also has the metaphor of a raft that, is carrying you across a river. It's helping you. That's what Buddhism is. But when you get across the river, it says, lay it down. You don't need the raft anymore. So maybe you don't need to, if you align with Buddhism, let's say, maybe you get to a point where the word of it or the theology or even the readings or some of the practices they stop helping you. Maybe you don't need them because you are able to just kind of follow the path naturally. We all evolve and perhaps change different, parts of our lives to align with our evolution. And Buddhism is fine with that, Maybe at some point you want to identify as something, and then maybe at another point you don't want to identify something because you've internalized it so much that it is who you are. And yeah, so I think I went off on a tangent there. That was not that's the verse. Okay, let's go return to the trail. On the other hand, those who correctly perceive, oh yeah, because I was talking about perfectionism and the middle way and the practicality. That was the rabbit hole I was going down. On the other hand, those who correctly perceive the essential as essential and the non-essential as non-essential will, in feeding on the right thoughts, attain the essential. And this next one reminds me of the parable of the sower. As rain pours through badly thatched houses, so does desire penetrate the undeveloped mind. So a lot of people have trouble, I think, with what they have perceived as the Buddhist, I guess, caution against desire, to be non-attached and to not have desire. And again, I think we have to look at even non-attachment in terms of the middle way. So it says here, through a badly thatched house, desire penetrates the undeveloped mind. But maybe for the developed mind, desires will be utilized and expressed and experienced in a different way that doesn't necessarily cause suffering. It's only when the desire has such a high level of attachment do sometimes we want to then possess and control. And the Tao Te Ching says that to control something is to destroy it. And so I think Buddhism, when Buddhist texts talk about desire, it's in terms of tempering the unhealthy desires and the unhealthy intensities of desires. If you want a good book about attachment, it's not a book that is Buddhist, but it is by Don Miguel Ruiz. I don't think it's Junior. Just Don Miguel Ruiz. I think, no, maybe it is. It is. Okay, it's Don Miguel Ruiz Jr. Don Miguel Ruiz wrote the Four Agreements, which we're reading in class during our spirituality mythology week. His son, the junior, wrote this book called The 5 Levels of Attachment. Sorry, I keep looking over there because I have a book case over there. I guess I have a bookcase over there too and behind me, but this bookcase is all my religious studies books. Yeah, so look for on Amazon or wherever you get your books, the 5 levels of attachment. It goes from non-attachment, which he says is your most authentic self, which again, can be, I think there can be misunderstanding with that, but it goes all the way to the 5th level, which is fanaticism or zealousness. And he has like a sports analogy, I think, throughout it. And he talks about how increasing your attachment to the most extreme levels can create a tendency towards violence. Because he talks about like people who are so obsessed with their football team that they might like break out in a fight. So I don't know, if you like sports, you might really like that book. As rain fails to pour through a well-thatched house, so does desire fail to penetrate the well-developed mind. So again, it's not saying necessarily, I think, that the well-developed mind does not experience desire, but it's that the well-developed mind is not drowned and, weighed down by desire, taken away from their path. This is 15. For the doer of evil, there is only grief, here as well as hereafter. In both states, he experiences grief, seeing his own unwholesome acts. So there's this idea that, certain certain ways or behaviors or feelings off the path that we might be utilizing for revenge to hurt someone else, they end up hurting ourselves because we live and we embody then that emotion. So how can, we not do that? And when I think about anger, I also think about Audre Lorde's great essay, The Uses of Anger, which I would recommend to anybody. It talks about sort of justified or righteous or necessary anger, which I think, something like Thich Nhat Hanh, who wrote a book on anger, like he wrote a whole book on anger and how to cool the flames of anger. I think he would probably have create space for. I think there would be space in Buddhism for appropriate uses of anger, because sometimes anger is a very helpful teacher, a very helpful sign that there's perhaps an injustice, or maybe there's abuse that's happening. Maybe something is not right with an institution or with society or with a country or with a relationship. And to really investigate that anger and understand what it's saying and what it's trying to communicate, I think can often, be very helpful. So, to have gratitude for anger when it's in the right place, like just think about like Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. What is the right place, the right quantity, the right quality, the right time, the right position? There are various aspects of appropriateness or inappropriateness that we can look at with kind of anything, basically, right? And he also has a middle way, because the virtues are usually the mean of two extremes. Right. Okay, so I think I'm going to stop there. I'm not actually finished with the chapter. There's about, it looks like 6 more verses, but you can kind of see, and I hope that these close readings are examples for you of when you get to your essay, your first essay, which is a short essay where I want you to choose a text to analyze, and maybe a concept in a text, or a couple of concepts or themes in a text, and to show you how you can make much of just a few lines. So that's kind of the practice that we all need to adopt when we're in class, in discussions, and how long can we talk about just one passage in a text? A really long time, at least someone like me who rambles, maybe. But I encourage you to maybe pick up a copy of the Dhammapada and maybe see what translations there are and read some reviews. But I really like this one. It says it is from Parallax Press, which I also really like that press. And it says it's $10.95. So I don't know. All right. I hope this was helpful. Let me know in the comments what you think of any of these verses, or if you've read. I think there is a part of the Dhammapada in your reader. So I can't remember exactly what it is, but I'll have to look back, see which verses it is, but maybe it's the verses that I've read. So okay, thanks everyone.